Hello everybody, welcome into my latest video where I'm going to, as promised, look at the bases which I am doing for my vampire counts for Age of Sigmar. It's a new army, I'm really excited about it. The vampires have been boxed under my bed or in the loft or on cabinets and shelves. They've been boxed and not built for far too long, so now it is time to get them out, get them built, get them painted, and get them on the tabletop, which is really, really cool. And as I showed off in my last video about them, one of the things that I'm trying to do with bases at the moment is take a little bit of the creative time out of it and just use 3D printed bases to construct, or 3D printed parts to construct the bases, in particular things like this, which is just like, this has just come out really, really well. Really, really pleased with this one. So what I thought I would do is take you through making a base for my vampires from scratch. So you've got all these ones here. You've got these models in various stages of being finished and painted and stuff. But all the bases, I think, just kind of lift, particularly kind of help and lift the models themselves. So what we're going to do is we're going to move all these out of the way so that we don't get them in the way, and we're going to show you what we're going to do. So the plan is today is we're going to make a base for the Blood Knight champion. So this is a Blood Knight champion. I have given him Prince Vordry's lance, so it looks particularly cool. All the other Blood Knights, as I showed you in the last video, have all got swords. So I like swords, so they all end up with swords. Everything, as soon as you can end up with a sword, which is, I think, why I like the Eskurgan True Blades, particularly my conversions for them as well, because it's just vampires with swords. So the champion, to kind of differentiate him out a little bit, I gave him Prince Vordry's lance, which I just think looks awesome. He's got the wings on his back and everything, and here is a base of the size which we need to use for him. And obviously we could place him on his base like that, nice and simple, or what I'm going to try and do is just kind of base him a little bit more off to one side with the lance pointing a little bit more forward, like that. There we go, like that. Just so that it's not like sticking out to the side. I think having it forward would be quite cool. So what we're going to try and do is we're going to put some paving stones and paving slabs on here, and then have a little bit of a height, and try and use some steps to give him a little bit more height and give him a little bit of a directional flow to where he's going to be going. So that's the plan. Let's see if we can do it. And what we're going to do, the 3D print files that I have got are these ones. So these are the broken tiles base toppers from Tabletop Minis, and he does a lot of different bases. I've got a lot of them, but one thing that I like doing with the base toppers, I like the base toppers because then I can print them flat on the bed with the settings that I've got and everything, and they kind of slide off really, really easily. I use water soluble resin, so you can kind of heat it up a little bit with some water, and they just slide off really, really easily. Really nice. And the bases here, so these are all, another thing that I like to do, particularly with kind of scale models, is scale down a lot of the details which are sculpted on these. So these ones are, I think they're 90mm, and the bases which we need here, these ones, if we measure the top, I'll just quickly show you this as well. If we measure the top here, so this is the size of the topper that we need. If we measure across the long edge here, like that, you can see it's just under 71mm. So 71mm. So what we're going to do is we're going to do it 70.5. That should be pretty good. We don't need to check this, but we will do just to make sure, and that is about 40.2, something like that. So yeah, this is an oval tends to be, when they're doing the base toppers, they tend to all be the same kind of proportions of the oval. So as long as you get this one measurement right, then the other measurement is also correct. So yeah, I think that's going to be okay. I think that will print. Well, it'll definitely print all right. And just like kind of looking and gauging on where it is, if we have a quick look. If we have a quick look on here, so the steps are going to be facing that way like that. So the horse is going to be kind of almost riding down the steps or standing on the top of the steps ready to ride down the steps at that sort of angle. The lance is going to be going forwards, the vase is here, and then you've got those extra bits just to heighten this area there, and then that will just give sorry I'm used to the camera being up there, it's in a slightly different position today, and that will just give a little bit more height. I like having height and silhouette and just kind of creating this extra space underneath models which have got a bit of height in their own kind of pose, so just doing that I think will look really, really cool. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to export this and send it off to the printer. Okay, so this is the base all printed out. I also added a little jar to the back side of it there as well. So all we're going to do now is slide this one off very, very carefully. There we go. And then we'll get that cured up, stuck to its base, and then we'll paint him up. There we go. Well, we've glued it on to the base here, and you can see because of the way I print it, and I print it like on the bed, so I don't print it at an angle or anything like that and support it. I just print it on the bed because then it prints in like half an hour. It doesn't take long at all. Because it's not very high, but you do get a few of these tiny little layer lines which you can see here. So all we're going to do is come in here with a tiny offcut of a little bit of sandpaper, and we're just going to rub some of these layer lines out. Just helps with the when you're painting it as well. When you're dry brushing, if you're dry brushing it, the layer lines like this kind of get picked up a little bit. So I'm just going to work on some of the larger ones, particularly on top of the base here. Right, so all sanded back, and there's tiny little bits left, but I'm going to throw some primer on that in a second. You're not going to notice it. So, but last little thing that we're going to do is we're going to throw some skulls, because they're vampires, so they need some skulls. So we've got some skulls here that we're going to kind of place on certain areas. That one I'm going to throw on the back, I think. This one can go on the steps. There we go, perfect. And then we've got a one with a broken jaw, which is going to go on that area down at the front in the dirt. Placing skulls is always a nightmare. I don't tend to use super glue. I've got some PVA glue here with some matte varnish in it, and pop those bubbles, and then we're just going to run that, hold the skulls down while we run some glue in. And this will hold them absolutely fine. Let's get to the painting. It starts off really, really simple. So I've just gunked some of the Vallejo primer on the base. I've added a couple of drops of water and just kind of wet the brush as well. So it is watered down primer, but I am just gunking it all over. Yeah, you could airbrush it, but I'm only doing one for the video. So once I get to painting all of the bases all at once, I'll probably airbrush it. But one benefit actually is that some of the layer lines that we were sanding off in the last part of the video, they do kind of get a little bit disguised, if you like, when you gunk the primer on like this. Now it's not completely gunked on. There is a little bit of water on there in the same way as this as well. So this is black grey, Vallejo black grey. Again, it's just just drizzled on the base, and then just adding a little bit of water from the brush. Yeah, again, you could probably use your wet palette, but hey, who needs to when you can? Bases they're not as kind of delicate as models. So if you just want to kind of gunk some paint on there, then it's all well and good. Now this is the bit that adds a little bit of interest and colour. So we've got Lauren Forest and Mornfang Brown. Now this has been watered down on the wet palette. It's probably 3 or 4 parts water to 1 part paint, and just kind of introducing it into some of the cracks and crevices that you think, basically just that you think a little bit of moss might settle and sit in the cracks and crevices of the tiles. And then the same with the brown as well. Brown is just to kind of represent a little bit of the differentiation of colours on some of the slabs, and a little bit of kind of dirt and earth that's around on the places. And then obviously just covering the skulls as well. So trying to get some brown on the skulls. So yeah, just kind of scatter this around. It's not going to matter too much. You can actually be quite kind of heavy-handed with it, because it's going to get a glaze over the top, and also you're going to get the dry brush highlight as well, which is going to pick up and kind of desaturate it all as well. So this is dark sea blue, and I only tend to do this on some of the kind of the character model bases and things. I did it on the zombie dragon, and it just helps soften the transition that we've got on the green and the brown a little bit. So you kind of turn it into a bit of a glaze. This is quite a heavy glaze, so probably 6 or 7 parts water to 1 part paint, and just kind of slosh it all over, and it just softens the transition between the brown that we had and the browns and the greens, between the greys that we had. So and then this is where we start kind of pulling it all together. So this is neutral grey. It was slightly heavy on the dry brush there, but yeah, this is neutral grey. I'm using a slightly damp brush. I've actually got the neutral grey on the wet palette. So what I've started to do when I've been dry brushing bases like this is dampen the brush which I'm using, and this is just it's just a makeup brush from Wilko's before Wilko's went under. So it's just I think it was £1. But yeah, make sure you got. I should probably be using a slightly larger brush than this, but it's fine for what for just a base sort of thing. But yeah, I've been using them on a wet palette, so I've been putting the paint on the wet palette and then kind of dampening the brush by kind of splodging it onto the empty part of the wet palette, and it absorbs a little bit of the moisture through the paper, which is quite good. And then you can dip it in the paint and wipe a little bit off as you would normally. It just keeps a little bit of moisture in the bristles of the brush, which is quite good. I've been removing the majority of the paint off the brush, and then you can see kind of applying it to my thumb, so that I'm not removing too much moisture from using the tissue paper. And then it's just back and forth, back and forth. Now this one is, you want this kind of colour to pull the whole vibe of the base together, so you can go in all different directions. You can go in circles. You want to kind of try and get every angle, and it picks up and kind of normalizes the grey of the base. And then this is the pale grey blue, and we're just trying to pick off the edges this time, so it's a lot lighter, focusing on the edges, focusing on like the front of the base, and that's where we're going to kind of get the light focus. If you remember looking at the zombie dragon had a very kind of front heavy light focus on it, so the front of the base was much kind of lighter than everything else. I do go a little bit overboard with this one, and it should be a little bit more focused. The light should be a little bit brighter on the front, and there should be a bit more of a shadow on this one. So yeah, don't go too over the top with yours. Try and kind of keep that focus. And also, if you do when you do have that kind of difference in the light volumes, and when you're dry brushing and doing the bases, it gives a little bit of interest to the base, which ultimately, like, it's a big flat surface. It's got some details all over it, and if you dry brush the whole thing at the same values, it just looks dull. So you can add a little bit of interest to it. You can see myself trying to heighten it a little bit here by focusing on the front of the base and just trying to bring up the front of the base a little bit more to exaggerate and heighten that kind of light direction and interest on it. But basically I've just gone a little bit too hard on it with that final highlight. But that's where it is. You can always kind of go back with a little bit of Abaddon black glaze and kind of glaze it back into to introduce some shadows again, and then pick your brown of choice. I think this is Balor brown, or maybe it's XV88. I think it's XV88 actually. And then I'm just kind of glazing that over the already highlighted skulls, and then pick another one for the terracotta pots. I think this is Burnt Umber from Vallejo, and then just kind of do exactly the same thing, just glaze it on to keep a little bit of the texture which has been added on with the dry brushing, and then you kind of already get an automatically highlighted little pot, terracotta pot, and the skulls as well. So the skulls end up being a little bit bright. I think I glaze those back again with just throwing a bit of Agrax Earth Shade over them, but that's where we get to on the painting. And now we can add one more little bit of detail, which are these absolutely glorious little miniature, they're from a company called Miniature like moss pads, which are fantastic. You'll have to do a quick Google on those because they're not as readily available as some of the other kind of moss pads. I would obviously, sorry, some of the other kind of static grass tufts. I obviously work quite closely with Rival Crafts, so if you want some grass tufts and static grass tufts, go to Rival Crafts. But these ones are they're like 1/2 mil long. They're very, very small. I use them on my Lord of the Rings base, if you remember Glorfindel for Golden Demon. I use them quite heavily on that, but this just introduces a little bit of colour and some texture and some grass to the base. I just think it looks fantastic. So you could quite easily use some longer static grass as well to bring out some more detail and some more interest and some more height as well to the base. So it's introducing some different textures to the base. You could use some longer static grass as well, which I might well do on things like the zombie dragon. I think I could probably get away with some like longer dead grass, static grass tufts on some of the areas in there. So I tend to, when I'm doing these kind of mossy tufts, try and find crevices, because that tends to be where moss is going to permeate and grow a little bit more. That one's being completely stubborn, but once you have added all those on, you'll have a really cool looking base, cracked earth, cracked tile base for your Soulblight Gravelords, or whatever other faction you would like to do. And that there is the finished base. Hopefully you all like it and appreciated the journey of of trying to simplify my bases a little bit, and then falling down rabbit holes, and the bases taking ages to create again. But they are quite good, and this is, I actually quite like the sort of flow of this as well. There we go. So you've got that guy, he's going to stand on there like that. So he's facing forward with the lance, but then you've got the sort of the other side of the base where you've got the view of the horse walking down the steps, which is quite nice. So nice little duality of the base there. I quite like it. So I'm going to do the rest of the bases for the Blood Knights. I've got some Black Knights to do as well, and I've just had a Terrorgeist here as well. So we've been, this is a similar kind of thing with the base. There's two ways of doing the bases as such, because you can either kind of sculpt them all in the 3D printing software like that and kind of construct it in the software, or you can just print the base and then build it up like I did with my zombie dragon that I showed you all earlier. So you could create it like this and just kind of build up the layers and the detail and everything, and the tree obviously bursting out from the paving stones and moving all the paving stones. Or you could do it like this with creating the parts on top of each other. But this is what it looks like once you're kind of building up layers as well. So this is the start of the Terrorgeist base, if you like. We've got the curved rock and the fence from the mausoleum, one of the pillars from the mausoleum as well, and then the Terrorgeist is going to sit. He's been reposed a little bit, but be very, very careful because we've got green stuff, spines on here, so he is going to sit on there like that. So he's going to sit there like that, looking particularly large and menacing, and then we've got plenty of design space underneath here now to kind of put some dead bodies around, lean up a skeleton against the mausoleum pillar and things, and add some more bits and bobs all the way around there. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of skulls all over that base as well, and keep an eye out on the socials for the finished picture of that one. That'll be really, really good. So I've got the two large monsters which I wanted. I've got the zombie dragon, and now I've got the Terrorgeist as well. Yes, I will probably do Nagash, probably, but that will be coming later. I also want to do a Neferata as well, so we'll see. But there we go. That is how I do these little bases for my Soulblight Vampires. I'm very, very pleased with them. I think they're fantastic. I think they're coming out really, really well. They give you lots of kind of design space and room to play around with, and you can create something really, really cool and unique. So there we go. Thank you very much. You can catch me on Twitch and YouTube. I'm here live pretty much every day of the week, so pop in and say hello and ask me any questions that you have on bases and anything else. And you can find me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, anything like that, just at Chris Frossin. So drop me a like and a subscribe, that'd be amazing. We're closing in on 5,000 subscribers now, so any likes and follows would be more than welcomed, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much, everybody. Take care. Bye bye.